Chapter 143 of the Frieren manga is out, and the battle of Ubel and Land versus Iris and Routine really gets started, and we get to see each of their perspectives and how they're handling their opponent. Plus, we finally get to see all of the Shadow Warriors in color for like the first time, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I'ma just get started with the chapter, which opens with a color page of Fern and Stark dancing together. However, it's less for enjoyment and more of them to spy on the Shadow Warriors. Fern can detect them and tells Stark where to look. Together, they can see Clematis, with Wolf telling him something. Of course, Shrit already looks asleep or drunk, and Gazelle is just walking around or something. Excluding those who left earlier, Stark knows they're still missing 3 more warriors, Kreis, Werlos, and Lore. They do doubt Lore would be there though, after Fern seriously damaged her in their last encounter. Together, Fern and Stark relay the info back to the others at the table. Frieren is done eating, and points out that it's time for them to take action themselves too. It seems like they'll be meeting up with Falsch in order to follow his orders. Zarya wonders why Zenza allowed Ubel and Land to take part in the raid. However, Zenza explains that those two will have the advantage against the warriors, even if Ubel isn't aware of why. Zenza believes she'll have the advantage in a fight as well, while Zarya just hopes their enemies aren't stronger than they anticipated. Back to the fight, Ubel and Land protect each other from Iris and Routine's first assault. Land seems to be using a new lightning technique, which he hasn't shown before. It seems to increase his speed as well, as he instantly moves to protect Ubel by taking 2 needles from Iris. Ubel returns the favor by shoving him out the way of a kick from Routine. However, Routine lands on Ubel's staff, which is actually a pretty cool move, and avoids the slash which easily sliced through a pillar. Then it seems like there's a brief pause, as we see how it's now turned into separate 1v1 battles, with Land vs Iris and Ubel vs Routine. Meanwhile, Kanal suggests a phrase that they can isolate the area with an anti-perception barrier, before realizing someone has already set it up. We see that 2 MSF members had gone to check the situation, before questioning why they came that way. That's because Falsch and Clematis have already set the barrier up themselves. Phrase acknowledges how skilled both groups are, since they were able to act so decisively in such an unexpected situation. Routine contacts Clematis and apologizes for being pulled into the fight. He himself is aware of the situation and has been listening in. Routine asks for permission to engage, and Kanon awaits Phrase's orders, since they have a chance to capture the Shadow Warriors right now. Phrase prefers to continue to monitor the situation and tells them to stand by, while Clematis feels they have no choice and says to engage. Hearing that, Routine immediately re-engages Ubel, dodging an attack and then grabbing a sword and shield from one of the statues. Routine uses the shield to block a slash from Ubel, which confirms her suspicion that Ubel can't cut through any of the armor yet. She doesn't understand Ubel's magic, but can block it with the shield for now. However, she does leave an opening, allowing Ubel to slash her shoulder, and Ubel can tell Routine is trying to analyze her. It seems like a bad matchup, but also fun for Ubel. Meanwhile, Land fires back the needle with immense speed, surprising Iris. Also, it annoys her that he used the needles without her permission. She can tell that he's the kind of mage she's bad against. Land fights in an underhanded way, exploiting the weakness of their soul track resistance. Plus, poison doesn't seem to affect him either, and both Land and Ubel are able to react faster than most other mages somehow. If Iris can't figure out why, she believes she'll lose this fight. Ubel seems like the intuitive type who can use magic without thinking about it, allowing her to react as fast as she does. Iris questions how Land is able to move like he does, while she fires more needles at him. When one needle gets fired back at her, she casually deflects it while wondering why he isn't affected by poison. Then she finally realizes that's not his real body. However, Land instantly grabs her by the neck, having moved so fast that it looks like he teleported. It's honestly one of his coolest panels yet. Still, even with her neck grabbed, Iris is able to keep yapping, explaining how he's actually the opposite of Ubel. He moves so fast because all he does is think. Hearing that, Land explains how he hoped his current tactic would work on her, since she's not a mage, and was surprised she had figured out this isn't his real body. However, Land thanks her since now he doesn't have to pretend anymore. He tells her good night before attempting to take her out with his lightning magic. Yet, the electricity doesn't even faze Iris, and Land is forced to block a needle, aimed for his neck with his hand. Iris explains that no matter how much pain or suffering she endures, she can remain fully conscious, which explains why her resilience to the electricity was so good. Before she can question Land about something, Land backs away, leading to Iris pulling out another needle. Land avoids the needles by getting back down to the floor, and understands now that defensive magic is too slow against Iris, while pulling the needle out of his hand. He believes Ubel might have already been dead if she was facing Iris. Thanks to Falsh's intel, he already knew she's resistant to poison, but her overall resistance far exceeds his expectations. At this rate, it could become a war of attrition, which would be bad for him. Then Iris asks why Land protects his neck, showing that she's also smarter than he imagined too. As for Ubel, she's struggling a bit against routine, even beginning to get blood on her face. She never expected Shadow Warriors to be this fast, but the shield is an even bigger problem. The spell of Binding requires the caster to keep the target's entire body in sight. The clothes count as part of their body, at least that's how Ubel and probably Wurbel saw it too. She sees shields as more of an obstacle and doesn't know how to get through. Ubel might be able to take Iris down if she were prepared to die with her, but knows Land wouldn't be okay with that. If anyone can turn the tide of battle, Ubel believes it's probably Land, as he seems to be doing pretty well in this fight. Ubel questions why though, since his moves are pretty easy to read for a mage, just by observing the flow of his mana. However, that leads to Ubel realizing that the warriors can't detect mana and rely on their 5 senses, particularly their eyes. Unlike them, Ubel can see everything. The chapter then ends with Ubel deciding to assess the timing, while Routine watches closely. Overall, I really enjoyed this chapter and how it showed the perspective of each character. It was cool seeing the analysis they each had for each other and how they had to respect their skills. Like Routine felt she was struggling against Ubel and was able to counter with the sword and shield. Iris was able to figure out Land by using her needles to pressure him multiple times. Of course, I'm very interested to learn more about the lightning technique he's using, which is really cool. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to have a good showing in this fight, because Iris just seems to completely resist it right now. I also think it's a bit of a missed opportunity for the MSF to not just engage right now. I get it's probably for the story, but they could just take out Routine and Iris right here. For the long term, I do get it's better to keep it observant though, and the other Shadow Warriors might make more bolder moves if the MSF get too aggressive. It's also hyped to see Frieren's party is on the move now. Their turn to fight is next, although I am kinda worried about Zarya and Zenza seeming to be left alone in the ballroom now, with Clematis and the others so close. But yeah, I really am enjoying this fight so far, as it's very interesting to see how all these unique movesets clash, along with the mind games going on. What do y'all think about the fight so far though, and who do you think will win? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. I got some more Frieren content here too that you can check out. Peace.